So actions are by intention. So what is an intention? An intention is the root of the word has to do with seed. Like a Noah is a seed. So an intention is the seed of your actions. It's what produces the action. Like if you look at this amazing backdrop that our brother Ismail did from hand, taking wood from a tree. That was once, those were trees in a forest somewhere. And somebody went and cut them down. There's a beautiful essay really proving how miraculous just a pencil is. Because we don't think about these things. So if you look like just the wood, what was the intention of the man cutting down the wood? It wasn't to be a mihrab in California, right? Somebody in South America who went in with an axe or maybe a machine and cut down. He wanted to make some money, maybe to feed his family. We don't know what his niyyah was, but he had a niyyah. And so then he sends it to the lumber and they make it into sheets. What was their niyyah? Probably to make money. And then the man who bought it just to ship it somewhere to sell it for a higher price, he had a different niyyah. He didn't cut it down. And then it goes to some warehouse somewhere. And then Ismail says, I'm going to make this out of mahogany. He could have made it out of other woods, but he chose that wood. So that wood was destined then to be that. But what was his niyyah? It wasn't money. That was maybe part of it because that's his livelihood. He wanted to make something for Allah. That was his niyyah. What was the niyyah of those of us here who we wanted to adorn Allah's house. To make it something beautiful, so that when people come in, they get a sense of, Inna Allah jamilun yuhibbul jamal. Allah is beautiful and loves beauty. And so beauty evokes things in people's hearts. So those niyyahs were all different. What was the niyyah of the person who originally made this geometric pattern? These are the tessellations of the Muslim world that are famous, replicable patterns. There's a great Russian mathematician who worked out there's only 17 possible infinitely replicable tessellations, these geometric patterns. 14 of them are in the Alhambra Palace. So they missed 3. What was their intention? Why were Muslims so obsessed with infinite replications? They were trying to show unity in diversity. They were trying to show the one in the many. So there's a reason why when you go into masjids, they have geometric patterns, because there was a symbolism in it that they wanted to evoke in the people that were looking on it, to make them think about these things. So actions are by intention, so that what is the seed? What is the intention of your action? And this is like in our tradition, you make, wasa'il, you don't have to make intention. But those things that are maqasid, like the prayer, you have to intend the prayer. And you have to attend what prayer it is. Like you should have the intention of dhuhr, because it's different from asr. So it's a distinct act of ibadah. But the wasa'il, you don't. So like, when you give sadaqah, or when you, or on your way to to get money to pay your zakat, you don't have to make the niyyah to go get the money. That's a wasila to paying the zakat. But when you pay the zakat, so the intention is very important in your actions, right? If you just have the irada, then that's part of the intention also, because niyyah and irada are related. In the Quran, there's يُعَبِّرُ عَنْهُ بِالِابْتِغَاءِ, وَمَنْ يَفْعَلُ ذَلِكَ ابْتِغَاءَ مَرْضَاتِ اللَّهِ. لا خير في كثير من نجواكم إلا من أمر بصدقة أو معروف أو إصلاح بين الناس. So whoever does that ابتغاء مرضات الله, if you do it, that's where you're going to get the reward. But you don't have to specifically make that niyyah, I'm going to do amr bil ma'ruf, or I'm going to do islah bain al-nas. You don't have to make that niyyah. The action itself is enough. So وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَى. Every person has what they intended in their action. فَمَنْ كَانَتْ هِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ فَهِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. So the Prophet عبر عن an action. He could have chosen any action, but this is a very important action. Why are you moving from one place to another? So whoever immigrates to Allah and His Messenger, in other words, intending Allah and His Messenger, right? His niyyah is to Allah and His Messenger. You're doing it for the sake of Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. فَهِجْرَةُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. His hijrah is to Allah and His Messenger. وَمَنْ كَانَتْ هِجْرَتُهُ لِدُنْيَا يُصِيبُهَا أو امرأة يتزوجها. And also the Prophet tended to use the female because he was speaking generally to men. He had one day out of the week where he spoke solely to the women, but generally he was speaking to the men with the understanding that they would convey that to their women folk. And so he spoke with that understanding, but they would convey that with the understanding it's also for if a woman does that to marry a man. So it goes both ways. So that's important. It's not sexist language. I mean, this is kind of a modern concept of, like, for instance, in Persian, you don't have the problem with the gender, right? Because the Persians, there's no gender in the pronominal reference. If you use a pronoun in Persian, it's all the same, he or she. In Arabic, huwa is also not masculine. Like huwa could be used for something that's neutral. It could be used for feminine. It could be used, so that's a problem when you translate into English, because English is very specific. We have he, she, it. Whereas in Arabic, they don't have it. They have huwa for it and he. And in some time, it could be also she, like the Quran uses the masculine to mean the feminine in the Quran. So what's amazing about this, the Prophet ﷺ said, if it's for dunya, some worldly thing to achieve it, or a spouse to marry, فَهِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى مَا هَاجَرَ إِلَيْهِ. He didn't repeat, like in the first one he repeated. He said, إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, because of the sharaf of the hijrah. But because the second one is dunya, he just said, إِلَى مَا هَاجَرَ إِلَيْهِ. It didn't warrant repeating. So he just used ma to say what. And that comes from a famous miskin who became known as Muhajir Qais. He actually made hijrah to marry. The woman told him, I won't marry you unless you make hijrah to Medina. So he made hijrah to Medina. So he became known as Muhajir Qais. That was his niyyah. This is very important. It's a foundational hadith. The second hadith that he mentions is an Abdullah Nu'man ibn Bashir, who was a very young. And the hadith of putting the feet together, which unfortunately is in the last, people don't do it anymore, but when I was younger, the people became obsessed with this thing of putting the feet next to each other in the prayer. And you had this problem. Like people would actually do it, and it became very annoying. But some people, because they found this hadith in Sahih Bukhari, which was on Nu'man ibn Bashir, and he said, the Prophet said, Taraso, come together. So he said, we used to put our feet next to each other. They were in the last saf, the children. He was a child. He was in the back with like Anas. And so they probably took it literally, and that's what they did. But that is, hadith is not ma'mul. It's not acted on. And there's nothing in our books that say that, to put the feet next to the feet. There is in one of the commentaries it says that they did this, but if you tried to do it today, the person would run away from you like a scared animal. So Allahu A'lam. But I think people who have experienced that know how distracting it can be for somebody. So Nu'man ibn Bashir رضي الله عنهما, because both of them, Bashir was also a Sahabi. قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول إن الحلال بين وإن الحرام بين وبينهما أمور مشتبهات لا يعلمهن كثير من الناس. So he said the halal is clear. إن الحلال بين وإن الحرام بين. The halal is clear. The haram is clear. وبينهما أمور مشتبهات. Between the two, the halal and haram, are gray areas. مشتبهات. اشتبهت علي. It's something that there's a shubha in it. Shubha is something, it's hazy. It's doubtful. It resembles one or the other. It can resemble both. Have elements. Yushbihu means to resemble something. So he's saying, لا يعلمهن كثير من الناس. The majority of people don't know how to differentiate between these two. The ones that do are the rasikhun fil ilm, the people that are firmly established in knowledge. And so he says, لا يعلمهن كثير من الناس فمن اتقى الشبهات, whoever protects himself from these shubuhat, استبرأ لدينه وعرضه. He has guarded he's protected, he's kept pure. Bara'a is like innocence. Al-bara'at al-asliya is the foundation, that things aren't, the permissibility is foundational in things. It's free of impurities or prohibition. لدينه وعرضه. So what is the ird? The ird is one of the 5 mahfudat of deen, nafs, mal, aql, and nasl. Nasl is included in that ird, and some added as a 6th in the mahfudat. So you have religion, protection of life, protection of property, protection of intellect, protection of family, and then in that is also protection of honor, because your family is part of your honor, which is one of the reasons why people don't go by last names anymore, is because of the loss of family. People used to always go by last name. And you see this in Jane Austen's novels. They always call people by, like, Willoughby. His name was John Willoughby, but they called him Willoughby. Why? Because they were referring to his family. In our tradition, the kunya is to remind the father that he's an exemplar of the son. Ya Aba Yahya, Ya Aba Anas. It's to remind the father that he's an exemplar to his son, and to remind the son that he carries the honor of his father. So you're not just on your own. You actually represent a family. And this is why traditionally everybody went by last names. You did not call somebody by their first name because it was too informal. You had to get to know somebody before they would let you in on that intimacy. But when family's lost, then everybody's just by their first name, because the family doesn't mean anything. And this is one of the great tragedies. The high school I went to, all the teachers called us by our last name. They never called us by our first name. And many of the students had parents who had gone to that high school, and grandparents. Because family, you carry your family's name, and if you dishonor your family, and that's why illegitimacy is so terrible, because they don't even know who their father is. So that's why there's so much criminality in illegitimate societies. Because what are you upholding? The name, the good name. My father's teacher, Mark Van Doren, his son was Charles Van Doren, who I actually knew and had correspondence with. He got caught up in a scandal in 1958. It was the quiz show scandal. And he was from, this family is a very distinguished family. There was Mark Van Doren, Carl Van Doren, and these were great literary scholars in America, poets, Pulitzer Prize winning poets. So when his son was found out to be cheating on this quiz show, it had a huge crisis in the family because he soiled his name. His father gave him a good name, and that's one of the best things that your father can give you is a good name. And the worst thing you can do to your father or your mother is to soil that name. I mean, these are something in the Muslim world they know. The Mujaddidi has a meaning. And so when somebody soils the name of the Mujaddidis by doing things that are wrong, they soil the whole Mujaddidi clan. And that's a crime against the clan. And it's a crime against Umar. And Umar ibn al-Khattab will take care of them on the Day of Judgment. He's not going to intercede for people that soiled his name, I don't think. I mean, he punished, children of the Sahaba. He didn't have a problem punishing them. I mean, one of the great Sahaba's son was an alcoholic, and he punished him. That's one of the things in the Hamziya he says about Omar. He said the Qarib and the Ba'id were the same to Omar. Taqwa was what distinguished his judgment on them. So that's really important to remember that about, So the ird is really important. And that's why it's so horrible to tell lies about people, to slander people, to libel people, to accusations. Qadh is one of the major sins in our religion. And it has a had punishment, slandering somebody, slandering the mu'minat, and the innocent believing women, to slander them, to say something about their, this is a really serious thing. And so then he says, وَمَنْ وَقَعَ فِي الشُّبُهَاتِ وَقَعَ فِي الْحَرَامِ كَالرَّاعِ يَرْعَى حَوْلَ الْحِمَى يُوشِكُ أَنْ يَرْتَعَ فِيهِ. Like the ra'i who yar'a hawla al-hima, like a shepherd who is taking his flock near a hima. The hima is the sanctuary. So if you take the flock near the sanctuary, yushik an yarta'a fi, it's going to end up eating from that grass that's prohibited. So the hima was the sanctuary of a king. If people who know Western tradition, in the Robin Hood story, it's a very famous Sherwood Forest, which is where they hid and hunted. That was actually a sanctuary of the king. But the king was unjust, and so Robin Hood and his merry band of men had no problems hunting and they thought this is very Western, like Cromwell. He said rebellion against tyrants is obedience to God. That's Cromwell. That's not necessarily the Sunni position, right? Patience is traditionally the Sunni position with tyrants. You have to be patient because rebelling against them makes it worse.